Let me go to Carol Roth. Carol Roth is just, I think Carol has just been a godsend. I have been looking for somebody that understands the economy broadly, understands the big business of Wall Street, but then focuses on the average person. And she has done that. She is a former investment banker turned to the light side, and she is the author of The War on Small Business. And we want to talk to her today about inflation, Congress and their insider trading, and what you should know about investing, how you can protect yourself for what is coming. Carol, welcome to the Glenn Beck program. How are you?
Glenn, it's great to be back with you, and I have to congratulate you on the Great Reset book. Mine is on the way. I don't have it in my grubby little hands because they ran out of copies because it was so darn popular. So I am champing at the bit to get my hands on my copy.
Well, you can get it on Kindle while we're waiting for the new books to be shipped out. Hopefully, we'll have some news on when those things are going to be shipped out. But the biggest book I ever sold was a 2 million seller, and in the first week we sold 150,000 copies. On day one, we sold about 100,000 copies on day one this time. So it's truly amazing. So Carol, let me. Let's start here with inflation. Inflation is not transitory. It is getting worse and worse. There are shortages in our grocery stores, and we're hearing blame from everybody, from the snowstorms, et cetera, et cetera. In my entire life, I have never seen our country, except in snowstorms for a few days, go through this, but certainly not countrywide. What is really happening, and how bad do you think this is going to get?
So this is I won't call it the logical outcome, the illogical outcome of central planners who think that they are incredibly smart and a direct result of the COVID policies, monetary and fiscal, that we have seen over the last 2 years. You had the Federal Reserve printing trillions of dollars and adding that to the economy. You had the federal government putting out trillions of dollars in stimulus money. You had governments at all levels deciding that they were going to treat the economy as if it were a modem that you could power cycle and flip it on and off, and they shut down about a third of the economy and assumed that that wouldn't cause disruptions to the labor force and to the supply chain. And then some of the incentives that they put in place and the uncertainty they created by their policy further disrupted that labor force. So when you put that sort of big storm of things together, that is the driver of inflation, and it goes all the way through. If the inputs to goods and services are increasing in prices and labor costs are going up because you can't find enough workers to work, and they have the leverage on their side, and your operating costs are going up, eventually the businesses are going to need to make up that drag, and so they pass those cost increases onto the consumer, and that's why you are seeing both an increase in cost as well as a decrease in availability of all different kinds of goods and services.
So the study came out, shows that what they have done to the economy has cost the average American $5,000 extra just in inflation. They said to us last summer when it was, going over 2%, maybe it'll go to 3 or 4, maybe it'll go to 5, maybe it'll go to 6. It's now over 7, and it's only been a few months. Are we seeing any signs of slowdown of this?
Well, Glenn, I'm old enough to remember last 4th of July when they told us we were saving 16 cents on hot dogs. I don't know about you, but I was very excited about that.
Yeah, I was very excited.
They have, I don't know if they actually missed the mark or they just lied to us, because anybody with half a brain, and you don't have to be a formal economist, knew this was going to be the outcome, and many of us have been jumping up and down for almost 2 years now, saying this was going to be the outcome. And by the way, that CPI measure of inflation, that 7% that you're talking about, is a urban household survey where they basically say, well, if you can substitute a good, we're not going to count that as an increase. So it's actually that the 7% they're saying you're feeling much more than that in terms of your pocketbook and your everyday shopping.
Wait. If you can substitute a good, so in other words, you can get Spam instead of ham?
Right. Then we're not going to count that. We're going to count the increase in Spam instead of the increase in ham. I mean, that's not the actual thing, but that's the the analogy to what happened.
Okay.
And that's how they manipulate these inflation numbers and have been doing that for many decades now. So whatever they're reporting to you, and again, we don't need to tell you this. You're going to the grocery store, you're out living your life, and you're feeling this. So you know the things that you're paying for have increased more than 7%, but that's what they're admitting to. So that's a pretty big admission when their target rate of inflation was 2%.
So can you go ahead? Go ahead. No,
I was going
please.
to say, in terms of where this is going, there are parts of this where I don't see how, even if you can get some of the supply chain back on track, and even if the Fed scales back its monetary policy, which it has said it plans to do, but I personally don't believe it's going to be at the scale that they're saying. The labor piece of this, we've had something like 3 million boomers who have retired early. We have some structural issues in the labor force. So what may end up happening is the rate of increase in inflation may come down. Instead of a 7% increase, it's only a 5% increase. And what they will do is they will sell that as a win. Oh, look, the inflation rate is going down. But what that really is cumulative. You're never getting back that initial 7% increase, which we know is higher. You're adding on top of that another 5. So yes, maybe you didn't get another 7, but that's money you are never getting back. That is a permanent tax on the average American.
You talk in your book and really lay it out really well. This is all due to the biggest wealth transfer of all time. It started in 2008. They did it again here recently, and it has completely bypassed Main Street and the middle class, and it's gone to the well-connected and the wealthy already. They're getting richer and richer. I've never been somebody who has a problem with rich people, or you make your money, you earn it honestly. However, they're getting bailed out by people like me paying my taxes and others who are working hard every day, and we are losing in this deal. And the end game is you will own nothing and you'll be happy.
Exactly. So this is the Great Reset playbook that you have written about, and I cannot wait to get into the details on that. But that is one of the tenets. And I have to say, I am not the most conspiratorial person. And when I first said, there's no way they said something like you will own nothing and you will be happy. And then sure enough, I went and I looked it up myself and I did the due diligence and went, oh boy, that's right there in plain English.
Yeah, it's there. It's actually in their advertising campaign. It's great.
With a video with a woman dumbly smiling, going, "Oh look, I own nothing," and I'm thrilled. And that is the issue here: is that they're creating these barriers to wealth creation and to ownership. And they've done it through monetary policy. They've done it through government rule. And it is the most historic transfer of wealth from Main Street to Wall Street. Because if you are a saver, or if you are a retiree, or you're an average American who's just trying to go and buy groceries, it's getting more expensive. You're not able to earn any sort of appropriate interest level on your savings to keep up with that pace of inflation. But the asset values have been increasing, and so we're seeing those people who are already wealthy and well-connected seeing their wealth increase. And so basically what you need to do is you need to take that playbook and flip it on its head. Whatever they don't want you to do, you need to do. You need to have ownership. You need to be focused on those assets and practice some delayed gratification right now, because that is the pushback against the Great Reset.
So I was saying earlier today, because this whole thing is to try to get you to not own anything, and they're going to bankrupt us. So you'll have to be very careful and really strategize, because you don't want to get into over your head debt. But owning property, owning your own house is so critical right now. And if it means you have to move away from where you really want to live, but you can find another place in a cheaper part of the country, that is a red state mentality, you should do it. Somebody called me today and said, would you consider condominiums real property?
That's a tough one. That's a tough one. I say this as a condo owner because it is, somewhat cooperative, and obviously we saw, as recently as within the last year, that if that cooperative doesn't make the necessary investments in the property, tragedy can strike. We saw that in Florida.
Correct.
So, I like something where you have that direct ownership, and the more direct you can own, the better. As you said, home ownership, other things to do, like if you are a worker right now, you are in demand, and if you do not have an ownership stake in the company that you're working with via options or equity, it's a really good time to look for an opportunity where you can share in that upside, whether the company is public or private. A lot of different businesses will offer you the opportunity to own a piece of the business over time. And that's, if you're going to work and you're going to put your time and your effort towards helping somebody else build value, participate in that value if you can.
Carol, there was a story that came out of the World Economic Forum in early December. They did another drill and brought everybody together from all of the treasuries and the central banks and the central planners and all of the government officials, and everybody was involved in this. It was supposed to happen in the UAE, but I think because of COVID, it moved to Israel. But what they were wargaming was the end of the financial system. And they premise that there are going to be people that are going to, through fake news and through hostage taking, like the oil company hostage, that they are going to collapse the system, and it will require a complete shutdown and restructuring, including of currency, in almost an immediate time period. That news should be everywhere, because that totally takes the United States out of the position of being the world economic leader. Doesn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the one good thing that we have, whether or not the World Economic Forum and all of these leaders, want to try and sort of topple what the U.S. is doing, the biggest strength anybody has is from a financial system. And obviously the U.S. is the world's reserve currency. The amount of power and money that is wrapped up in our financial system, it's got to be amongst the biggest on the planet. So while there are proposals that are sort of wafting out there to do different things that would be really, really treacherous, there are two different ways to look at it. Somebody calls it Tina, there is no alternative. I like to call it being the skinniest kid at fat camp. But we are that leader, and I think that even if there are calls to push against that leadership, I think we have it's almost like having a financial army. We're going to have the pushback to do everything we can to stop that, because when you're on top, what would be the benefit to collapsing that for all the people who are in those power positions related to the U.S. financial system?
So let me ask you this. Congressman Tom Emmer, he's from Minnesota, Yesterday, he introduced a bill prohibiting the Federal Reserve from issuing a central bank digital currency directly to individuals and making them, the one-stop bank. This is something that is being talked about in the Treasury in their own white papers. They're talking about this, and at the Federal Reserve. It looks like something like that might be in the offing in the coming couple of years. Is that something that should be stopped?
Yes. So this is the area where, the central planners sometimes get too clever for their own good, and having a central digital currency that is maintained by the Federal Reserve would be horrible, both for our status as a reserve currency, but for the average American.